and welcome to Just Paint It. I'm Christina Watts, your host, a professional artist living in Prince George, BC, and today I want to show you how to paint a really nice ocean scene with a few boats in it. So let's get started. On my trusty card palette here, I have a few colors. I have a phthalo green, 3 different kinds of blues, cobalt, ultramarine, and a really nice bright blue. That is more of a phthalo blue. Also, I have some sunset colors, so a nickel azo yellow and a quin red and just a touch of purple on the corner just for some shadows. I also have a big amount of white, and if you see some white areas globbed up in here, that's because I have a GAC 100 put on these paints because they're extra heavy body and I want them to move a little bit, and so I've thinned them down with this so that I don't lose the glue binder that is in our paints. I'm going to start off with a paddle brush. This is really fun because it's big and it covers the canvas really quickly. I did dampen it and I'm diving into my white, and I'm going to go ahead and add that right on here. Now these are MDF panels. You can get them in artist grade, you can get them just at your local hardware store or get them cut down at places like Windsor Plywood for you. And they provide a nice thin surface for you to play on. Now the artist grade ones, of course, they're built to last. This guy here, he will, as long as you have a ton of paint on him, he will also last a long time too. So as you can see, our paddle brush really goes a long ways when it comes to covering your canvas. I'm going to work on the sky and the water at the same time because what happens in the sky echoes in the water when you're creating water type pieces. I do have a little bit of the blue on my paddle brush just because it did hit into a corner there, and that's okay, I can add that color in. Now the reason why I'm adding the white first here is because acrylic dries 20% darker. So if I start with a light color first and I keep it wet, then I will be able to maintain sort of a good hue on my colors. You don't want 24 hours later for your whole canvas to look considerably darker than when you painted it. Now I'm going to switch up some of this because I've got a ton of white on here, and I'll cover up the corners as I work my way out. I know there's going to be darker edges. I'll vignette it a bit, so I'm not too worried about going all the way to the corners here. And as you can see, most of my strokes are horizontal, so they're going from one side all the way to the other instead of my usual crisscross patterns, which I will probably break into at some point here. Now what I want to do is in this scene it's going to be all about the water, so I want to bring my water up to 2/3 of the canvas. So this down will be my water. I'll have a little bit of a sky and some mountains here, but then we'll have our boats and other fun things down here, and of course our water and our nice fluid parts of it. So now I've got some quin red on the corner of my brush, and I'm diving into the nickel azo. Sorry, this was gold, plus we have yellow here. So these are really nice sunset colors, really enjoy them. I'm gonna run the yellow in right up here. And on the other side of my brush is the red. I'm going to run that up there. And if you want this to be a little bit more dramatic, then do your sweeps on a slight diagonal. There's a very good reason for that. It's because diagonal patterns in art are exciting and they're fun, and they can really sort of draw your eye into the scene. Now the reason why I'm coming down at a different diagonal here is because that's the echo in the water, right? So it's reflecting what's up in the sky. And I'm just using the corner of my brush. If I was using the whole thing, you would see red now in the water, which I'm going to do now. Okay, so I'm going to echo some of that red right in here, swooping it across, big even strokes. And now I concern myself with the sides. So as I blend back and forth, I pull the paint out just a little further to start covering up these edges. And then if you want, if it's really bothering you, you can still take your white paint and go in if you haven't used a lot, because some people, they're very frugal with their paint, and so when you try to pull it all the way across, you don't have much paint to pull through. So go a little thicker with your paints. You'll have an easier time painting, especially when you're doing all of these blending and wet into wet, like wet paint into wet paint work here. I'll add a little bit in just to show you how I tackle that. A lot of white paint going down here. Now I want to keep this scene light, typically, because if I don't and I try to put boats on top, then they're going to disappear and you're not going to see them. So keep it light. Start light, work dark in this particular scene. Okay, now I've used the whole paddle and you can see the color starting to come in from both corners. And I'll put in some white here. Not too terribly concerned with the bottom because it will go darker in a bit. And you are going to use a lot of paint when you do this. So one of the things I like to mention with these working on a panel, it could be a canvas panel, it could be like an MDF panel, it could be an artist MDF style panel. They're nice and they're slim, and you can pop them into a standard frame if you get them cut right. So get them cut to a regular size that you can find frames for. Go into the store, get your frame, pop the glass out, pop your panel in, and you've got yourself a nice little frame without too much hassle. Okay, I'm adding a little bit of my yellow in here into the red. I know these colors are good friends on the color wheel. They're analogous. So any of your yellows into your reds, those will always work together. And what I've done up here, I need to do also in the sky, because these two elements are reflecting, and that's important to capture. So we're going to drag that out. And this is the part where you really can start working your sky, giving it a little bit more, giving it a little bit of personality, I guess you could say. We'll add in a little bit of clouds. And if you want to do clouds, you just have to make sure that you have some dark spots sort of built up already. And those are, here's a little bit of crisscrossing that I said I was probably going to go into eventually. Very gentle, hardly touching the canvas there. And now I'm going to get some white on my brush here, and I just want to brush up and around these bits. This sometimes is better done with a smaller brush, but I am cheating here because this will save me from cleaning a bunch of brushes later. Okay, so touching the corner, lifting it up. Get yourself a good brush that's got, like, I don't know, I really like the flexible bristles on a brush. They give me more to push around. You don't want a brush that hits the canvas and just flops over. And then I'll probably jump into my filbert brush next here and fix these clouds. So let's get that. I'm gonna put that one down for now. And now we're jumping into our filbert brush. And our filbert brush is fun because it's got a curve to the top. It's a very nice soft brush, not so soft that it flops right over, but it's got just really gentle hairs to it. And these are great for fixing up any of your clouds, any organic work. So here I'm just touching my brush to the canvas, and I'm using just the tapping motion to soften these clouds out. And once you get it too dirty in your other colors, you have no white left, then you'll go back onto your palette and get some more white, and then come back in and we'll tap this. Okay, so just be gentle about this. You just want the indication of some atmosphere up here in the sky. And leaving brush strokes is great. Try not to overblend things. Now the other thing I want to do while we're up here is we want to start tapping into, I'm going to go a little bit purple. I'm going to try some purple. Maybe a little bit of the lightest blue, cobalt blue. Mixing that up a bit, touching it right over into my white here. So I don't want a really strong blue because it's going to hit these corners with the pink, and it's going to do that on its own. But I do want some color up here, and I want to vignette this. So depending on how dark you want to go, this is purple now. Cutting in here. And if we do it on that side, we should do a little bit on this side. This is just a little extra little pockets of this stuff happening. You could fidget with skies for forever. But we'll keep this perhaps a little pastel-y. Put some white there. Remember, it's going to dry darker. Now the reason why I want the bit of the blue up here is because our mountains that we're going to put in the background are going to be blue, and it's going to really sort of, you know, be showing in the sky. So you want to echo your colors around. You want to bounce that blue into the mountains, into the water, just here and there, not too crazy. A little bit of that, it's graying it out, and just give it a nice little scene here. Maybe I'll put a little bit of red back up here just to break up that shape. These are things that you think about and decisions that you make as you're working through your painting. And then the rest, I will say, I'm gonna horizontal, sort of diagonal shape some strokes up here just to keep the flow of the air and the clouds blowing the same way. Cleaning off my brush. I want a damp brush, but I don't want it to have like a lot of water on it, so I'm cleaning it out on my side water here. I tapped off the extra water, and now I'm just using it to gently soften some of the areas in the sky, because that just gives it just a nice little touch. Okay, so we don't want to lose all our texture. We just want to soften it here and there. We certainly do not want to overblend this whatsoever, or we will lose some of our interesting brush strokes that we've put down. Okay, and if you see any straight lines, like you want to just adjust them a bit. You want the flow to go up, but you don't want necessarily this perfectly straight line. So we're doing that. Okay, I'll clean my brush off again. A little bit of white here. Just want to keep that right. And now I'm thinking to myself, I need to, we've got some really solid yellow here. Just want to break that up. But what I don't have is that same kind of a line down below. So I have two choices. I can add a little white into this one to soften it, or get my paddle brush, go back into the yellow, this Azo yellow gold mix here, and make sure that I have the same thing happening down here a little bit deeper. Okay, that's not too bad. I'm just gonna rinse that soft filbert brush out again. A little bit of a damp brush here, smoothing that out. As you can see, that little bit of water on here is really going to help me move any of these hard lines out and fix it up down here. Now another thing when you go to frame these is the frame, the black frames will come in a bit, so any of your issues that you have right on the edges aren't going to show. Okay, so don't worry about those too much. And then we're going to get into our pink again. So we have to move a little bit quick because the canvas is it is definitely drying. And that is where this GAC 100 comes into play too. So what it does is it thins down our paints a bit without taking the glue out of them, so that it can glide a lot better and not come off later on. And when I say come off, what can happen is you can water your paints down so much that you lose the glue in them, and then they will eventually flake off your canvas. And that is something that you want to avoid. I got a little blue on that one, that's okay. This little corner here. And at this point, this is a pretty good diagonal up, so I need to start considering, you know, that water is flat. And unless there's a bunch of waves in it, which there won't be in this round, then I need to consider adjusting some of these lines so that they're just a little bit straighter. And in that case, I will add just a touch of water here and just start moving this into a horizontal, more kind of horizontal, less diagonal strokes. It still echoes the top, and we are definitely going to take some flat horizontal water through here in blue. But if we don't have some of this a little bit straighter, it might look funny. Okay, that's good enough. I'm not too worried about anything that happened, the drip of water that went down, because that's going to get covered up later. A little bit down here. Painting's a lot of fun. It can really bring you a ton of joy. It can really lead to a nice moment in your day. And it gives you a sense of problem solving. So as you're working through a canvas, you'll encounter problems the whole way through, and it's how you start engaging, how you're going to fix it, how you're going to adjust, what's going to make it work, and it kind of like gets your brain going in different ways. And so I think it's one of the healthiest things that you can do mentally for yourself. Okay, with this part done, we're going to go into our mountain scene. And for that, I'm going to get a kind of a 1-inch flat brush here. You can use a round brush. You can really use any brush for mountains. And I'm going to dampen it in my water. And now I'm going to pick the blue, and probably a couple blues. So I've got that phthalo blue on here. I got a cobalt blue going into my white here. And I just want to tint it. Really love how these boards end up looking when you've been painting on them. So this is again another MDF of that. I'm using it as a paint palette today because they're fun to mix on, but also after this, any of the extra wasted paint I can just move around this board, and it will be a canvas to play with later, and it already has paint on it. Okay, so we're gonna do our mountains up here, and for that, so I'm thinking 2/3 of the canvas, I'm gonna just cut a line in here. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight. We are humans after all. But this just gives me a horizon line to work off of so that I can start putting in those really kind of distant mountains off. I know when I go to the island and you know you're at Parksville and you're looking across the bay towards the mainland, you see the mountains over there, and they can have peaks, they can have a little bit of valleys to them. And it's really up to you if you want them blue, if you want to make them more gray. I will probably end up going over these a bit to make them a bit gray, just because it makes sense. So the mountains that I want here are going to echo what's happening up in the blues here, more of like a gray blue. But I'm going to start with this first and build that up. Okay, when you're doing mountains, think about having some peaks a little bit higher than others, some broader. What you don't want is this. Just nothing but just triangles all the way across. If you do that, it's not the end of the world. See, I can even fix this here, right? And then I'm gonna bring in maybe a bigger mountain here. Okay, so that's it for like laying in those mountains. I did use the edge of my brush a couple times to cut in for those peaks. That's why using a flat brush is good. just makes it so much easier to cut in mountains. And these guys will just be a little smaller here. Okay, so we've got that. Now we need to build up with some of the grays. So we've got my purple, and that's over here. I'm gonna put a little bit of the red on it. Right, so now we have a little bit of that and a touch of this azo yellow, because that's going to knock these colors into more of a warm range for our mountains, and all of this is going to make a really nice gray. Color mixing is an excellent thing to get into. It's can save you a ton of money with your paints if you know the colors that you need, and also the knowledge of color mixing helps you while you're painting on your canvas. Now, when I put this tone down, what I'm looking at doing is keeping my brush strokes coming down in the shape that perhaps your mountain would come down, and I am pushing some points down and skimming other points, and that's why you see this variation in here. It's all to do with the pressure of your brush. The pressure of your brush. That's almost a tongue-tied one there. Okay, again, some more of that color. I've got it much darker on the edge as I work my way in. And because I have it considerably darker on this side, I definitely want to make it darker here coming in. Remember, vignetting a painting is a powerful tool. And if you want, you can even do just a slight bit here, just giving it the indicator that that mountain is in front of some of these other guys. Okay, that looks just like the coast. Not quite yet. Let's keep going here. So now that we have these in, and it's okay if you see a few brush strokes off. I think it's what makes a painting, the brush strokes. We're going to start working our way into the water, and for that I really love using the palette knife, but I'm going to do that last because that's the easiest way to put in the highlights. We're going to go ahead and jump into our paddle brush again, because this will do the job fast and we'll keep our paint a little thin. I'm just going to wet this a tad on my water. So I'm using my hand to just run a strip of water on top of the brush. And I am brushing it a bit so that I don't have a ton of yellow and a ton of pink on here. If I do, it's not the end of the world because we have that already in our mountains. So now we're going to get into our ocean, and for that I'm going into all three blues. So the nice thing about paddle brush is you can do one blue in the middle, one blue on the end, and the other blue far off on the other corner. So now I've triple loaded this paddle brush, and you don't have to, you could just simply do this with a regular brush. This is faster, and when you only have so much time, then you want to make sure you get the job done quick. So I'm skimming the brush here, and I'm being very gentle about this because I don't necessarily want to lose all of the background that I put in that echoed the sky, right? So if you have to turn your brush sideways like this on the edge to do that, great. So it's so fast, it can be super easy to do. Cut that one right across there. And now I'm using the edge of this paddle brush to come down. I love marks like this. They make me so happy to see reflections, and that has everything to do with your weight on your brush. So I'm going to reload again. Those colors, that color, and this color on that end. And now I'm going to bring this down a little further. I'm going to set this down a moment because I want to now definitely get right at the edge of this canvas. So I'm just going to tilt it off of my easel a bit and hold it. And I definitely want more blues down here. Pull that paint right across. Try to clean up that bottom there. Okay. Okay, so that looks good. I've got some marks here I want to double check on, because the thing too that you want to remember is these are reflections that need to come down. So I'm giving a little bit of a mountain reflection and take away from it all the way. And step into here to cut across again. Okay, so that's a great another layer of paint that we put down. We're starting to come together. This is a really bright piece. Love bright colors. I hope you do too. If you ever want to do a muted color, you can. You just simply have to use slate versions of the colors that we're using right now. Okay, so now that I've slammed in the ocean there, I am cleaning off my bigger 1-inch flat brush. And I'm going to smooth some of this out. I may choose to jump to a filbert because that's a really good soft brush for softening some of the edges in my water. Okay, so all I'm doing here is just a really easy, gentle brush with a little, nothing but damp, clean water. And any of the pieces that you want to change, like let's say you put your blues down and you blew it and you need to pull them back, well, this is how you do it. It's like erasing, right? So you use just a damp, clean brush and you can erase. See, I pulled back some yellow right there. And then you clean your brush again and you come in and you add some more little layers. Okay. So my focus right now is I'm thinking about cutting into those shadows of the mountains. If you need to, use your fingers. And just keeping any of my strokes horizontal. I'm gonna vignette over here. So my concern is to bring in some of the blues in a zigzag here. Zigzag it down. And zigzag on the other side. Pull some of this in and pull some out. And we've got great colors in this. If we go too dark with this, what will happen is we won't be able to see our boats on top, so I'm being very kind of cognizant of that. And I also want to make sure that I'm keeping some of my lights in there, so I am cutting through some of the extra dark blues. It's really up to you. You may have liked those marks that I just took out, but I am going to adjust them. Okay, this is working out great. Love water. Water's super fun, super easy. Just go sideways. And that one. That up. And there's my filbert. I'm going to clean that streak up so you can see that it's just so much softer than the flat brush bristles that I have on here today. Okay, as I stand back, I can see that I have this really nice pattern coming down here in the water, so I'm really looking to echo that. So my lifting now, this is the technique, it's lifting, is to all about pulling back to that last layer. This is a technique that you use a lot in watercolor painting. That's another medium that I absolutely love, and I do classes on that. And when you learn, I found that if you learn watercolor and then you learn the other mediums, you have so much tools under your tool belt. Because a lot of people wouldn't think that they can just erase acrylics, and you can. It's very simple to do. In fact, we're just doing it right now. And I want to pull out some more of the red. This is always quite the process to see how a painting is developed, to see how it changes. And every stroke you learn something different from, so yeah. Okay, starting to think we're almost there. I'm gonna stand back. And I know I have gone a little bit down on this side here. Let's see if I can adjust. Your horizon line should always be straight, technically. Sometimes when you're operating from an angle on your painting though, you can start tilting this way. So if you find that I've done that, it's just because I'm showing you today. And it's something that I want you to avoid though when you're doing your painting at home, and that is to have a very firm line across here for your horizon. We can also put in a little white streak with our palette knife, which we will do next here. So let's jump into that. I'm going to go ahead and get some more white paint on my palette. I've used it all up. Now I did put phthalo green on my palette. I haven't really needed it yet because I can see that some of these greens are still coming through. So I always put it there just because it is a great color for seas and it's a bright green. So get some nice new blobs of white here. We're going to need them for some highlights. And we're going to use our palette knife to cut some horizon lines in. So this is where I really like using the edge of the blade because it's a straight edge. So drifting it through here. And I'm gonna try my very best to do a reasonably straight line. Try to break it up. It does not have to be, you know, the same width and this, you know, same length the whole way across. You can break this up. You just want to give it this nice indicator that, you know, maybe there's like a port over there, or maybe there's some stuff going off in the distance. Find this is too big of a blob, not the end of the world. Scrape off your paint onto your palette. Another great reason to use these flat surfaces. And we're just gonna go back and forth on this a little bit, drag that out. If you blow it like I have here, use your finger and fix it up. So now I will go into the blue, probably brush some of this out. So these things happen, and it's important that you just simply roll with them. And it is just paint. You can always get more paint. I'm gonna pull that down again. And go into my blue, come up. If you're going to redo this, you're better off taking it out a little bit further than what you need, and then getting into your palette knife again. And while I have this, and I notice there's a pretty good blob here, just going to adjust that a bit. Switching tools, and grabbing that palette knife, and let's fix this. Okay, there we go. Don't get too carried away or I will mess it up again. Okay, let's start putting in some boats. So this is a lovely little bay. We're gonna have a few boats hanging out. They're gonna be very simple boats. I really love just making some sailboats. And they're a lot easier than people think they are. So let's determine. Now the thing that you might need to decide is How big do you want your boats? That, you know, if you're not confident with boats, maybe make them small. And if you put them in and you don't like it, then you can erase them. I'm getting some black all over my hands now. It is a world of paint. And if you don't get paint on your fingers when you're painting, well, you're doing it wrong. Okay, so for my boat, I've got black now on my palette. I am going to put some green on it too, because this is a real nice fluid green. So going ahead, I'm going to cut some green on my knife, cut some black on it, tapping the extra off, satisfying taps, and I'm going to decide where I want my little sailboat here. So I think for this piece, I'm going to put it right here. I'm going to get that mast line running right up top. So start with your palette knife and just use the edge to give yourself a nice mast. And because I'm keeping this very easy for you, we're going to do another mast right next to that mast. So I'm crawling this guy up here. It is not going to be the same height, so that's something to look out for. Okay, so I'm going to make sure this mast is a little higher. And then I'm going to, we were using the edge of our blade. We're going to use the back of it now. Okay, so nobody paints with the very front of the blade. It's not really something, not how you use a palette knife. Some people, you always want to use your back side of the knife or your edges. So just keep that in your head. And I've gotten blue, I've got the green and the black on here and taken a little extra off. You don't want it, you know, too thick on here. You just want it enough to do the job. And now I'm going to kind of come down from this mast here and over and in. Okay, so what we're making is like a bit of a triangle, and then we're swooping over, and as you can see, we're getting some really nice sort of fabric looks to this because we're pushing it out to the edge. If you blow it and you've gotten on a flat edge there, it's not the end of the world. You can fix it. This is just the impression of a sailboat. So that's a good start for one sail. Let's do the other side. I'm gonna come in, and again we're gonna adjust here and pull it in. It's important that you leave some see-through here so you can see that there's water in between those two areas. Now we're getting into a real small area here, so I'm using the tip of my palette knife as I go up, and then I will clean these up in a bit. Okay, so a small sail on one side and then the other. And once we have those lines in, we can go ahead and grab some more paint. We're going to do a bit of a base. Now for that, I'm only using half of my knife, so I get the extra paint off. I'm just putting paint on the top end, and I'm going to come down here, and what you want is just sort of a, I want to say a rectangle shape with a bit of a base, right? Where we're just going to put in the impression, and I'm using the tip of my brush to do a little scratching here. And that's important when you're doing these boats too. Okay, so we're giving the impression that there is a sailboat here. Let's add a few more scratch strokes. This pulls it through. Now, unfortunately, this isn't the straightest scratch stroke, but now we see that we are getting a boat shape in, right? And it's just as simple as that. We're also going to work my way up and add some extra blacks and fix some lines in here. But then the last thing that you want to do when you have your boat, and this is kind of a little bit off here. I'll put that shape back in. But you also have to know that it's sailing, right? So there is a shadow under the boat, and it goes into the water and off. Let's just add some blue now because we are in the water and we don't want our boat to look like it's floating on the top. It's got to be in the water. So we will do some adjustments for that. So now that we've used our palette knife, all we can there, we're going to get into our little brush. We're going to use, I've got a little angle brush and I don't often take these guys out. They're good to have in your arsenal, but yeah, they're just not a brush that I use a ton until I go to do work like this. And in that case, I do use it just to fix up some spots that I might not have nailed with the knife. I'm gonna get in real close here so I can see what I'm doing. I'm gonna put a little bow up here, just ever so slight off of there. And bring that boat into the water a bit more. Horizontal patterns out. Blue on my brush, both blues. Got our cobalt blue and our ultramarine blue now. I'm gonna add that in, adding it into the boat too, because remember the boats, even though it is dark, will still be reflective of some of what's around it. And then we're going to do some erasing again. So let's see if I want to adjust this line here. Right, we can adjust these lines. We can add a cabin. Let's add a cabin by scratching a little square out of the top here. And it really is interesting when you make boats because people's eyes will look at that and they will fill it in their brains as to what it is. So as long as you got a few shapes that give the implication that it's a boat, you'll be fine. And it's something, this is a boat that can be done, as you've seen, in just a few minutes, right? So let's go ahead and clean that up. Now, we can decide if we want more boats, if we want to just leave one boat. That is up to you. I'm going to adjust some of this stuff. So again, if you don't like some of what you've done, it's not the end of the world. You just have to erase it. And that's what I'm doing here. I wet that line with that line. Okay, clean that up here, and then we're gonna do a little bit of strokes to clean this up below the boat. You want it to be moving away, but still not. So we're giving the boat a trail, we're setting it in the water, but we're still giving it the impression that it is in the water. Grab my palette knife again. This guy's really fun for little things because obviously you would have a few extra lines in here and you might have some mast sails coming down, a few extra ropes coming in, right? And perhaps you had a rail system. So now I can't really see, this is not the best way to see it, but just give it that indicator there. Okay, so there's one boat. Let's do a different type. Well, I don't know. Should we do some more boats? Let's, I'll put a few boats in and you can decide for yourself at home if you want to add more or just keep to one boat the way it looks now. So I'm gonna go over here and we're gonna just put in another little boat. Let's do one off in the distance. So, you know, they're kind of coming in together here. Okay, we're gonna go here, here, and we're gonna probably pull in some masts like that. Now, because I'm getting into a smaller area, this is gonna be trickier with my palette knife. So I'm just gonna do some indications with where I want the boat to go, followed by some brush work. So I'll put one there, and let's go ahead and put one. One big one, I feel like another little guy right there. Okay. Let's get our brush. Angle brush, small angle brush. Let's start filling these guys in. Now I kind of blew it on this one, but I'm not too worried because I know I can fix that. Cleaning my angle brush off. And we're going to cut down up here. Okay, cleaned that up. Scrubbing these out. Gonna give this guy some blue here. Same up here. Scrub that one out a bit. Clean the line on this one side. Cut it in. Right, want to cut it in. Jump back to the tip of my palette knife. And see how I just scratched out some highlights there. Same here. Scratch those highlights out. Just thinking about this one. This one's drying pretty good now, so there will be not too much for highlights that I'll be able to pull out of that one anymore. But now we have our sailboats heading off into our bay, and it's looking pretty good. Sometimes I would go in and do some white highlights on here, but because we've used the palette knife today, we scratched out our highlights. And that is such a powerful thing to do, and it's easy. Anybody can do it. It's gonna see about some little spots that I've missed here. And we're gonna add some blues now under these boats. Using my finger to just guide that out, mostly because I know this is going to go black, and if I don't put some blues here on top of the black, you're just going to have this like weird shadow down there. And then we're going to wrap up the water down here, so as the water was calm and reflective over here, as it comes closer to us, we can see more of the ripples in it. And for that, palette knife. My favorite. I've got blues, I've got white, all on my knife, real thick, really, really, really thick. I'm gonna put this down over here because I will hold the base with my arm, and then I'll kind of come in from my side, and we're gonna go a lot thicker here. Run out of paint, reload. Lots of paint on that knife. Now once I get it on the canvas and it's thick, I turn my hand sideways and I just go back and forth. There's this little spot here that went up a bit, and that's fine. I'm going to pull it in more. Remember, we can just push a little harder with our palette knife and butter it across. And then white. Good amount of white. Wet paint with the blue. This is something I like to do, is a little bit of an arc, just because it does give some of the impersonations that there is some water that's really moving here. Once I have that arc done, I just want to pull it all sideways. And a little bit of dark, because if you have the white, you need the dark. I'm also getting a little green now. I'm gonna throw that in. I got a little purple on there now. And we're gonna go back over some of this. So I'm really looking to get this really thick paint job down here. And we'll work back and forth between our lights and our darks. And I don't overblend this, okay? Do not overblend this. I love the way palette knife, and only palette knife, can make that little bit extra happen on your canvas. And there we have it. We have a really nice deeper scene as we move all on our way out. And the only thing I might adjust is that one spot that I came up to here. So in this case, I just brush it out and up a bit, still avoiding the extra paint down here. And that is pretty much it for this one. I am gonna sign off down below. I'm gonna use white because it'll actually show up here. Right into my paint, being bad. That's it for this painting. I hope you have an artful day. And now I'm gonna hop on over to the Dirty Hippie set and see how he's doing.